The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
There's a sefer. This is a very famous Maggid. This is Rabbi Galinsky in Eretz Yisrael, a very famous Maggid. And he tells a story about himself. He tells the following story. Beautiful, beautiful story. And he says the following story. He said that when the Germans were capturing Poland, so the Germans were on one side and the Russians were on another side. He said, so all the yeshiva boys all ended up in Vilna. And there was a yeshiva in Vilna. And the famous Gadol Hadar, like the tzaddik of the Dar, his name was Rav Chaim Oizer. And he was a young boy, Rabbi Galinsky. And he came to get a bracha from Rav Chaim Oizer. He came to get a bracha from the Gadol Hadar. So, he said when he got to the house, he said he got there at 11 o'clock in the morning. He said, I didn't sleep a whole night. Why? Because I know when you go to the Gadol Hadar, he's going to ask me, what is he going to ask me? How the Yankees are doing. He's going to ask me, what are you learning? His first question is going to be, what are you learning? His next question is going to be, so tell me a chiddush. Tell me something new when you're learning. And his third question is going to be, tell me another chiddush. So before you go to Rosh Hashiva for a bracha or a gadol, you got to make sure you know your Gemara, because he's going to ask you, what are you learning? So he stayed up a whole night learning Yavamis, right? So he was ready. Fine. He comes in, and this is what Rav Chaim Oizer says to him. He says, I have 3 questions for you. So he's like, oh, I know. What am I learning? What chiddush did I come up with? And what other chiddush did I come up with? And he says the following. He says, my first question is, Masai Kibalta, when was the last time you got a letter from your parents? It's the last time you heard from your parents. This was during the World War II. So he said, I'll tell you the truth. I haven't heard from them in a year because we're separated. They're on the Russian side and we're on the German side. He says, okay. My second question is, do you have a blanket? He said, a place to sleep he didn't ask him because nobody had a place to sleep. They were sleeping on the benches in the base medrash. But if you wouldn't have a blanket, you would freeze to death. It was freezing. So he asked him, do you have a blanket? He said, yes, I have a blanket. Okay? He said, good. He said, my third question is, I want to see your shoes. He said, I was embarrassed, but I didn't have a choice, so I pulled up my pants. He said, and of course, my shoes were ripped, the front was open, my toes were showing. He said, but I didn't have any money to buy shoes. Immediately, Rav Chaim Oizer gave him money to buy a pair of shoes. And he said, my house, this is the Gadol Hadar. He said to this young boy, my house is open for you 24 hours. Whatever you need, you come and you ask me whatever you need. He said, so you would think that I would start smiling and I would be happy. He said, I began to cry. And I cried because this Gadol Hadar, I studied a whole night that he's going to faher me on the Gemara, and all he was interested in knowing is how's my shoes, do I have a blanket, did I hear from my parents? He said, I began to cry. I began to cry and to sit in front of such a tzaddik, and all he was worried about was how I was, am I warm? Do I have shoes? Do I know from my parents? He says, these are the Gedolei Yisrael. The Gedolei Yisrael understand that the ladder from Oretz goes to Shemayim and everything in between. And that if you want to reach Shemayim, the ladder is on the Oretz. The ladder is not in Shemayim, the ladder is on the Oretz. The end is Shemayim. And a person needs to know that you have to have both. You have to have the spirituality and the davening and the tehillim and the tznius and the spirituality is very, very important. But also your oretz, the things that the mundane things you do, the schooling and the going to business and the eating food and all these other things that are on the oretz, that's part of the ladder that gets you to Shemayim. That also has to be taken level by level by level by level by level by level up. So here he went to this huge tzaddik, figuring, oh my God, he's going to faher me on all the Gemara. This tzaddik understood that the bottom of the ladder is the human being in this world. Are you freezing? Do you need a tea? Do you need a coffee? Do you need a seat? Do you need a chair? Can I help you? Can I help you cross? That is on the same ladder. This is a neighborhood place, this world. There's Shemayim and there's Oretz and they're connected. And you need to know they're connected.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org